Inconstant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I am Kat, she, her, and there's a lot happening, and I have so many things to tell you all.
I'm Taryn, he, they, and on December 4th, 2024, early in the morning, I was chilling at home with my best friend Luigi, who was all the way here on the West Coast. And I, like so many other people, will happily be a fucking alibi witness.
Before we get into Dan Torrance's life, first announcement is this is the last episode before we take our January break. It is going to actually come out in January, so yay, we just really wanted to finish this book, which we did. And then the second part of that is, though, we are moving, and that requires time and energy that normally might go to a podcast, as well as energy we straight up don't have. So February is going to be weird. As excited as we are to read Salem's Lot, which is going to be the next book, February is actually looking like we're probably going to be just discussing some movies. Right now, the plan is to watch Sleepwalkers, which has never been a short story or a novel. It was written straight for the screen. And then also, secondary one is still currently up in the air, but we have thoughts and ideas. Either way, it'll probably be another, discussion about some sort of film.
You think Sleepwalkers is going to be good because it was a foray into screenwriting, or do you think Sleepwalkers is going to be fucking terrible?
So I have seen Sleepwalkers before. So I have seen it. I will tell you right now, it's so bad.
But is it?
It's bad in the right ways.
Okay.
To be fair, I enjoy Sleepwalkers, but I don't enjoy it because it's legitimately just a really great movie. Also, Leo from Charmed is in it.
Oh, that's right.
And he's like the heartthrob.
He was supposed to be in Charmed. Remember when Piper couldn't decide between him and the firefighter?
The significantly better looking man. Ron Krause looks fine. But the dude who played Dan was damn good looking.
Brian Krause?
I think it's Brian Krause.
It's something Krause. If Leo just lived on the block, he could get it.
Yeah.
He's like a solid Reno, 7?
Yeah.
7, 8? Hollywood? Hollywood, though?
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah,
Sir.
exactly. I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's good in a way that's how most 80s horror movies are good. They're stupid. And they're ridiculous. And the entire premise of this movie is ridiculous in my opinion, which is what makes it good. It was solid like that. I am more interested to watch it now with the lens of the Stephen King universe and how it falls into place with all of that. Because I had seen that movie before I ever read a Stephen King book. But I'd also seen The Shining well before I ever read a Stephen King.
I feel like that's probably most people's introduction to it's that, or it's Carrie, or it's...
Or in your case, Shawshank Redemption.
No, it might have been Green Mile.
Okay.
It's one of the two. I didn't like horror.
So you had to have his prison movies?
They're emotional and good don't judge me.
I'm not judging you. I'm judging your parents.
Oh, man. Fair. For what it's worth, I don't think I watched all of Green Mile or Shawshank. I probably didn't watch Shawshank till I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I think I was probably a preteen, maybe a early teenager when I saw parts of Green Mile, but it wouldn't have been called appropriate. And it's very sad. I don't know that I've ever watched it again. Now that I am older and I watch horror movies, I will take any horror movie over The Green Mile any fucking day. That shit is...
That's what I've heard.
I know that eventually we're gonna have to do it, and I don't want to. It's gonna be... It is epic. It is wonderful. I can't wait for you to see it. I will... It's not, triggering... But I don't want to
No, that's fair.
Oh my god, it's so sad.
We all have those things. I can never play Final Fantasy 15 again, apparently. Every time I try, I stop.
I don't mean to laugh at your pain, but I was there. I was there when she made it to the end, the only time.
Yeah. You don't need to go more than once.
I saw the trauma.
Well, speaking of trauma, there are a lot of trigger warnings for Dr. Sleep.
Okay, so hyperventilate first.
Let me get a drink of water.
Do that too.
My throat is dry, I know this.
For anybody who feels like we're not trying to make light, I mean, we are making light of the trigger warnings, but because this sucks. The fact that there are so many sucks. This isn't fun. Gotta do it. It's important to do it.
And it did slightly trigger me into crying at one point.
Oh. Now I want to know. I want to know what part. I think
We'll
I
get
cried
there.
as well. Okay. I'm in.
All right.
Deep breath and then measure your air as you go. I'm gonna coach you through it. Sorry, I shouldn't have. Okay.
But I don't know if this is going to be the book that I ever do in a
No,
breath.
it's not. But
no, there's too many.
No. Yeah, but that's why
I also stumble over my words a lot.
Start big, and then when we finally get there, it's gonna feel like easy, and I'm not gonna look at you while you do it.
You have to stop making me laugh.
I don't mean to. I can't help it. It's too quiet. I feel like I have to fill the empty space.
I'll cut the empty space out.
It's not for them, it's for me.
Fair enough. Alcoholism, child death, addiction, death, murder, violence, child abuse, kidnapping, blood, torture, substance abuse, injury detail, gore, body horror, death of a parent, cancer, terminal illness, domestic abuse, grief, sexual assault, medical content, physical abuse, pedophilia, sexual content, gun violence, vomit. No, couldn't do it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Sexual violence, mental illness, stalking, suicidal tendencies, medical trauma, racial slurs, incest, racism, infidelity, car accident, and misogyny.
I only counted 2, though. I mean, you did kind of breathe heavy, but I only counted 2 breaks.
Yeah. So we finished Dr. Sleep from part 3 to the end, including a sneaky part 4.
For a more complete list of trigger warnings, look in to actually follow them, look in the episode description.
Yeah, look in the episode description, and there's some that I probably didn't catch. Some also were kind of like repeats, because I pulled these off of Storygraph, which is an awesome platform that isn't Goodreads, and I strongly recommend you use Storygraph instead because it's not owned by Amazon. Fuck Amazon.
I'm so glad that everybody's getting on board with fuck Jeff Bezos, not in the good way.
Yeah.
Not
I believe that Storygraph was actually started by a woman of color too, so
oh, lovely.
Go support a small creator who, I mean, at this point, Storygraph's pretty big. I don't know if she still qualifies as a small creator. That's pretty awesome, though. And it does have things like content warnings, and you can track your reading and stuff. And I really like the information they give you, because they will break down, what you seem to read a lot of, so you can start kind of curating your reading to that.
Not sponsored. Still no sponsors.
No sponsors. We're just a reading podcast, so we have a serious reading problem. We go to the library on Saturdays and come back with more books than we could ever read.
I took an extra trip to the library today. Just went by, some books were on hold. I took more books back, thinking, okay, cool, I'll get rid of some. I'll start thinning out because we're moving. And I don't want to have to move library books on top of my books.
Yeah.
I brought back more than I took back. I brought home more books than I took back. It's stupid. It's a legitimate problem.
There's always something on in your head if you're reading. Anywho.
Are you saying it's escapism? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, of course it's escapism.
Yeah, you know what? I don't really want to live in this world. I would take the problems of having to deal with the true knot over 2025.
I'm an adult and I don't have the shine. The True Knot doesn't want me.
No, exactly.
I'm barely even a rube. Like,
man, to go back to like 2013. Oh, I kind of want to go back to 2013.
What was happening in 2013?
None of the shit that's happening right now. Anywho, so we begin traveling in a world of pure imagination as Dan, David, and John are riding the train with Abra in Dan's mind.
You know what? Sorry, I just have to cut in because that is such an accurate, because it's kind of whimsical, kind of scary. So that's such a great imagery. Thank you. Sorry.
So yeah, Abra's in Dan's mind to help lead the True Knot into a trap. She is actually currently at her friend's house trying to be present enough there. Barry, Andy, Crow Daddy, Jimmy, and Nat are on their way to try and catch Abra. Barry doesn't make it though, but he does have some parting words with Crow Daddy before he cycles away. When the rest make it to, I think it was called Cloud Gap, but I didn't look it back up before I wrote it down, so... hoping that's right.
No, that sounds right.
Okay. And they face off against Dan, David, and John. The crow is missing, and Abra is freaking the fuck out about that since he's not there. They have killed all the others. They've all cycled to nothing but piles of clothes. Abra had managed to lie to her friends like parents and go back to her house. Billy was stationed outside to watch her, and while confused to see her out, he trusted she wouldn't do anything stupid. What? Like 13-year-old does stupid things. Barry's parting words to Crow was that there was a chance Abra wasn't where they thought, so Crow split from the others and made his way to Abra's house. He knocked out Billy and hid in his truck until the time came to go in and snag Abra. The other members of the True Knot dead. The Crow keeps Abra and Billy drugged and tries to make his way back to meet up with another crew headed his way. Abra manages to get word back to Dan, and the two of them swap places so he can kill the crow. Once he cycles, Billy and Abra go to a hotel to wait for Dan, David, and John, and also her mother, because Dan decides it is finally time to tell Lucy what's going on. They also need to make an additional stop to see Abra's great-grandmother. It is revealed that Dan is Lucy's half-brother, so for anyone else who's been starting to wonder when that infidelity content warning was coming in, here it is. Jack was even more of a piece of shit. Death flies start appearing on Dan as he isn't doing so good. Lucy doesn't take the news about Abra too well, and basically it's a lot of blah 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 between her and Dan while she gets up to speed. As you can tell, I didn't really give a shit about this part. Dan also has Abra call Rose and taunt her, tell her that she's on her way and that it will be a one-on-one battle. To have the other members of the True Knot all go to one of the buildings on the grounds. They make their way, like they being Dan and the other adults. They make their way to Abra and Billy, and it's all cloudy, but as soon as Abra sees them, it gets sunny, because, clouds happen. Every time we're going into, showdown, it's cloudy.
Cloud Gap.
Meanwhile, Rose is plotting her revenge. She tries to rally the True Knot, but some ultimately decide to bail. Taking on the kid isn't worth it, so they just bounce. Rose plans to take advantage of the stipulations given to her, which she didn't really understand, but it's because her ass went blind, as evil sometimes tends to do, and very often does in a Stephen King book. She takes advantage of them congregating the True Knot, means that there's power there because there's so many of them, because they're legion. She also has a secret weapon in Silent Sari, I think is how they're trying to say her name, because her name's Sarah, which is Snakebite Andy's partner, who can go dim. Dan and Billy split to head for where the Overlook once stood. Dan gets out early and they set up a doll to look like Abra in the car to give the impression she's actually there, when really she's just like venom inside of Dan's head. Dan goes into his mind, into his old room in the Overlook. He and Abra talk about the plan. He also makes a stop to return Mrs. Macy and Derwent to their home, even if the hotel no longer stands. Dan then slips down to where the building is, where all the True Knot members are hanging out, and unleashes what is killing him, which is Chetta. He had intaken her, red dying steam. And that's when he had also learned about his and Lucy's connection. Rose eventually realizes that she has been set up and works her way into Dan's mind, forcing him to force ghost Abra. Eventually, they kick her out and regain the upper hand. Sari is unfortunately a victim to Derwent, so she was unable to do her part of Rose's plan, and Rose ultimately didn't quite get This Is Sparta kicked off the mountain, but she did get pushed off the mountain and she cycled on out. Dan burns her hat because it's full of evil, and I'm looking at you, Frosty. Dan is recovered.
Not everybody hates Frosty. Sorry.
But clearly, Stephen King does. That is what I'm taking from this. And Abra and Dan will never watch Frosty the Snowman the same again.
I like Frosty the Snowman.
That's fine. Good for you. Frosty the Snowman also, like, hung out with children and was kind of creepy.
He was a child. It was his birthday. It was his very first day alive.
Yeah, that's how I would lure children into, I suppose.
They saw him come alive.
Just saying. I could see the inspiration here for Rose the Hat.
The magician guy whose hat it was is way creepier.
That's true.
I mean, I more than one person can be creepy, but that's not the point.
So Dan is recovered now that he is no longer holding in death. Abra returns to her body, which is back home with her parents and John. Before leaving, Dan sees Jack's ghost, and they are able to have a brief goodbye. Life is a wheel. The book skips. The orderly who had injured a patient years before is now dying in the same room as the man he hurt. Dan is there to ease the process. Dan has also hit his 15-year sober birthday. Abra has anger issues, and she has admitted to taking a drink to Dan, who doesn't bother to tell her that he also didn't like it at first. So here's hoping Abra's wheel will have a stronger support than Dan's or Jack's. That's basically what happened.
Well, it was a great episode, and let's wrap. So actually rolling from the last point, that was something that I felt like was actually very strong. Because it's kind of a call out to shit like the DARE program, where the more you tell a kid no, and the more you try to tell them, like, just say no, the more they're gonna rail against it and think that something is cool. Dan just being there for her, and not especially since she was already in trouble for having drank, I felt like that was very smart, and that's part of how you break that cycle. I really liked that. I really liked how instead of it was very show don't tell, because he stops talking to his sponsor. Like the sponsor who doesn't recognize the fact that these are inheritable traits doesn't show back up after that conversation. And we get shown, no, Jack's dad had this issue. Jack had this issue. Jack caused all of, like, created both of these families and has passed down these problems to both of these people who have these issues. I know that was a criticism that I had earlier in the book. I really liked where we ended. I have high hopes for Abra because she does have so much support around her in a way that Dan did not have, Jack certainly did not have. Who knows about Jack's dad? Maybe Jack's dad has super loving family and he was just a piece of shit. Who knows?
We have seen those support systems increase each time because Jack, really, he only had one friend, and that friend wasn't very fond of him either, because he was still just like, no, Jack, don't write about my hotel. That's my moneymaker. I don't want you writing a fucking book about it. I went out of my way to get you a job, so don't screw me on this. So we know he had Al, and he had Wendy, but Al really wasn't present very much. And even, like, in his thoughts, Al was not a voice that Jack heard. Whereas, like, when we're at the beginning of the book and Dan is looking at taking Deanie's stuff, he is hearing both his mother and Dick. Jack never heard Wendy's, like, voice other than to criticize him, and his father also wanting to criticize him. He didn't have a supportive voice in his head telling him, oh, don't do that. Don't murder your family, please. And Dan legitimately has Dick and Wendy's telling him, like, don't do this. This is not okay. Even if we're just, like, voices in your head and this is not, like, memories of anything, you know that we would tell you not to do this. Yeah. We are your conscience and you're ignoring us, but, like, it's different. And I feel like Abra, she legitimately she's got Dan, her parents, who are useless, but her parents, John, and Billy. She's already increased.
Jack didn't stop drinking really by choice. It was kind of a choice, but he felt forced, and that's presented throughout The Shining. Dan chooses it because he can continue down the path that he's going, which is not giving him satisfaction. There is no happiness anymore. He's not getting anything from it. It's just the thing that he feels compelled to do. Or he's offered this other side, but he's offered it. It's not an ultimatum. Not really. It's just, hey, like, if you're sick of feeling this way, come to this meeting. Like, if you want something better, I will give it to you. Like, I will give you the tools, but you gotta take it. And I think that makes a difference. That's why it's really important that he doesn't lecture Abra.
Yeah.
It has to be her choice whether or not drinking is a thing that I want to do or I don't want to do. If it's, no, alcoholism runs in our family, and if you keep, I didn't like it either, but then, you keep drinking it and then you're gonna like it. You take the choice from her. Every human is gonna fight against that.
Yeah.
And be like, no, I will decide.
Well, and I think that's really how a good community functions. We don't tell you what to do. Now, we might choose, like, if you pick something that we cannot abide by, we might say, hey, we can't be a part of the same community anymore. Yeah. And I think it would be the same with our new quartet here of people that, we love you, Abra. We want to support you. If you legitimately go down the path that your uncle and your grandfather and your great-grandfather all did, it probably means you're going to end up isolated from your community, because there is just a point where people won't tolerate it. And it is, one, for their love of you, and two, for taking care of themselves.
Yeah. You're crossing other people's boundaries.
Yeah. You don't have to be told what to do. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think she's in a much better position.
Yeah.
Because she does have a stronger foundation to just start life out on.
Yeah.
And also, being 15's hard.
Yes.
Being 15, no matter what, like, whether you have male or female hormones pumping through you, being 15's really hard. I wouldn't go back to that.
I don't know that you could pay. Well, yeah, you could pay me enough. There is absolutely a number. There is a number that could be reached.
Yeah.
Where I would go back to 15 pretty fucking quick. But it's probably not that high. I like money, but
you want to start out with a good nest egg too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You do what you got to do.
But that being said, it would take money.
It would take money, yeah, because being 15 is just hard. Because, like, I did like the description of this where she's saying, like, I'm just angry because, frankly, that could have nothing to do with the, like, Torrance anger issues. That can just be being 15.
Yeah.
You're just kind of angry because hormones suck. Yeah. And hormones, while you're having to, like, go be around other people because you have to go to school and shit.
Yeah.
They suck. They just suck. It all sucks. It's not fun.
I wonder how much is actually a legitimate Torrance anger problem, and how much is that there's a cycle of abuse that's happening, and abuse victims kind of freeze at the age where abuse, or where they start, like, where, like, substance abuse begins. And so if they're really, like, Dan, it was right around Abra's age where that starts.
Yeah.
And if you kind of freeze right at that age and you don't progress, if everybody's really angry in their teens, all of the Torrances are kind of getting stuck right at, like, 15, which is an angry, shitty age.
Yeah.
So is it that the Torrances are just naturally angry, or are they making decisions that freeze them at a place where everybody is angry and they don't know how to process their emotions?
They definitely don't know how to process their emotions.
I think I want to believe it's that one because there's more hope for Abra. It makes it a little easier for her.
Yeah. Well, I guess, Stephen King, you better write another book so that we can see what happens to Abra.
God, no, don't add to it. We have so many fucking books to read.
Well, it's not like he's gonna release it tomorrow and we have to then pivot.
We aren't gonna finish them all by tomorrow. Stephen King, stop. You have to stop. Move away from your fucking computer right now. Don't write another fucking word.
So he does have a book that's coming out early next year.
No!
But I don't know what it is. So it doesn't matter. Like, it would be at the end of this journey, most likely, if this occurred. And it doesn't matter. Anyways. So...
It'll never stop.
It should also be noted that, like, Dan did finally tell the story of Deanie and Tommy to his AA group at his sober birthday.
And not a single person gave a shit.
I know.
They weren't
Nobody
even
cared.
listening. It was the most accurate of, like, a group of people listening to an introvert that's ever existed. They're like, there wasn't even a shrug in the room.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That was incredible.
Everybody just did not give a shit. They're like, yeah, some of us have done far worse than this dude. What the fuck?
Most of us. That was your rock bottom.
But I also did notice, because obviously we had already had Deanie, but Aber's friend's surname was Dean, I think.
Was it?
I think it was. I think I wrote it down because I thought it was interesting. Because obviously, Eddie Dean, you talk about him so many times.
Yeah, I do. I was about to, like, yeah.
Yeah, her name is Emma Dean, but with an extra E at the end.
Oh, shit. E. Dean.
Yeah. And so that was, I think, part of why it had already triggered, because Deanie obviously had triggered something. But the fact that we go back to Dean as a surname, too, and her name is Emma Dean.
So I wondered through a lot of this book how much were legitimate connections, how much of it was Stephen King poking fun at himself.
Yeah. Because
there were many names that kept getting reused. And that's something that we've talked about so many times.
So many times.
That I feel like he has, like, I don't know, between 10 and 20 names in a fucking bag, and it's like Scrabble tiles, and he just shakes it around like he's got female names, male names, unisex names, and he just shakes the bag when he needs a fucking name, and then he reaches in the bag and he pulls one out. And I feel like for this book, especially since, didn't you say that he had, like, his like lore historian help him keep track to write this?
Yeah, there was a gentleman who helped him keep track of his continuity. But you know what's funny is I actually have a typo in at least this copy. I don't know if it happened in yours, but for the True Knot, when they were getting out of, like, when they were in the fight with Dan and David and John, at one point it swaps Jimmy's name for Billy.
Did it?
Yeah. And I was like, I could have sworn that dude's name was something else. There's only one Billy in this story, right? And so I went and I looked, and yeah, Jimmy, for some random reason, there is a typo in this particular copy that I have where his name gets swapped to Billy, because it's listing out the members that are, like, no longer part, like, because they're dead, they cycled out, and it's listing them, and instead of saying Jimmy amongst, like, Andy and Nat, it says Billy.
I don't remember. That sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
Because I got super tripped up on it. Like, did I fucking miss something? Was there another guy? I could have sworn the accountant dude's name was not Billy.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's Jimmy.
Yeah, he's Jimmy Numbers.
Yeah. So, it just was random and kind of funny to me that at the very least, I don't know who made that mistake. I don't know if that's in editing. I don't know if that's on Stephen King. I have no idea who made that mistake.
There's a lot of places along the line where it could have, like, where I feel like it could have been made.
Yeah.
That could be an expensive copy or it could be a useless copy.
Well, I mean, now it's all highlighted and flagged up. So.
I know, because I'm looking at it going, I wonder.
It's a good book. The part that made me cry was Jack showing up.
Yeah,
yes. But to be fair, I mean, it is a hard time of year for the Dead Dads Club.
It is, in fact.
So, you know, DDC gets weird sometimes.
It does. I think I might have teared up around that part. I'm pretty sure I, like, air punched a whole lot because that was intense.
For being as lousy of a person as Jack was, because he couldn't get his life together. it's still like, it's those nice moments, and it is moments like the end of The Shining where he is telling Danny, like, remember that I love you before, I am completely gone. And now he is also stuck where the Overlook used to be, because like while Derwent might have been happy to go back to his shed, it doesn't mean that the other people that are trapped there want to be trapped there.
He did want to stay.
He did want to stay. He wanted to be the manager. Managers, that life sucks.
This book described it as he gave himself up for Danny, which was nice to have. Like, that was not something that I felt like it wasn't clear in The Shining. It makes it seem so much more like he is just jealous of his kid.
Yeah.
It was something that clarification was good. And I feel like that moment when the extra whoosh of air comes, and then like when Dan does turn and like see him, it is very healing. Like, it is meant to be healing.
Yeah.
It was good. It was a very good moment. Follow me down a rabbit hole. So Scott Cawthon
oh God
says he has said before, he's full of shit, but he said before that he only releases a new a new FNAF game, a new Five Nights at Freddy's game, when something needs to be clarified in a game from before that people didn't understand. Again, he's full of shit, but this book felt like that. It felt very deeply like there are things that people didn't get from The Shining. It couldn't be because Stephen King was out of his fucking mind when he wrote it, but it felt a lot like, hey, you're not getting the point here. You're not getting, or maybe it was just me who didn't get it. I'm not the most, like, I have okay reading comprehension, but I don't always get, like, the imagery of shit. And I feel like the point of The Shining is so much more clear now that I've read Dr. Sleep. Like the joke of, well, now he has to write the next one. I would hate if he did. This story is perfect together. Like, the way that it is done, it's finished and it's right. Unless the third one was great, because I loved The Shining the way it was, but together, it's
a good duology.
Yes.
I have to agree, because honestly, I don't think I'd actually want a third book.
No, I couldn't stand a book all about Abra. God damn. She's fine, but, like, she's such a teenager.
I think that it works because it shifted the main character more. Yeah. Because originally when you read The Shining, the main character very much seems like it's shared between Jack, Wendy, and Dan. Yeah. Well, Danny at that time. Yeah. But because of the way the duology continues, while we still have three perspectives that we tune into, which is Dan, Abra, and Rose, two of those don't make sense in connection to the original. The main character, like, they're all three still mainly characters. But my point is it's the story of Dan Torrance. Yeah. It is him as a child, as a very powerful, shining child, up through becoming, the teacher, to another very powerful, shining child, which it's just wild to me that Jack Torrance's, like, sperm spawned this much shine.
I would argue with you. Stephen King says at the beginning of The Shining, and when he talks about The Shining, that it is a family story and it's about the Torrances. It's the same in Dr. Sleep. The through line of both books is that it is about the Torrances. It is about that family. So I think that it's not so much the story of Dan Torrance, it's the story of the Torrances.
That's fair.
The first book makes total sense that it's the three of them because it's just that whole family. The outlier is Rose. But I get it because it's kind of comparing, because you had two people who were just good guys who were facing off with Jack, who's falling into becoming the antagonist. In Dr. Sleep, it's made, again, it feels like it's written to be like, hey, you didn't fucking get it. Clearly you didn't. If you like that Kubrick movie, you don't get what I was going for. And if you keep asking for another one, so here, let me make it much more fucking clear. And then we get Dr. Sleep, which is you have two main protagonists. Well, I hate using those terms because I'll be honest, I don't always fully understand what they mean.
Yeah.
And I tend to just relate them with good guy and bad guy, and that's not what they mean. And so Katie, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. I know that you do know what those mean, and I am sorry if this is sandpaper on your eardrums. You have two good guys, and one who is just the bad guy from the start, but is a sympathetic bad guy. And is a bad guy who maybe you're not against. Like, hey, maybe being a rube does suck. Maybe it would be cool to be an RV person. Maybe I've been in an RV before and, like...
So...
Like, I fucking drive around in one. I don't fucking know.
Forgot to tell you about this. When I went to the store the other day, I don't know if, like, we have some sort of, like, weird, like the true knot that spawned off of them. Like, that was like, yeah, we're not gonna fuck with this. Passing through Reno or not, but there was like a weird congregation of like, they weren't quite RVs, it was a bunch of VWs, but like we got a VW bus, a bunch of like Beetles too that clearly are being used to like live in, and they like had set up shop in the parking lot of the grocery store that's by us.
I need to believe that like as the True Knot has dissolved, they've downsized, and now with influencer culture, like
van life,
huge, van life. You can't have these huge RVs that are gas guzzling. People will like give you dirty looks and shit. Like, that's not the thing anymore. Like, you want to like minimalist.
Yeah, is
the go-to. But also, it makes me wonder if there's like a community of like Volkswagen people.
I think there definitely is that. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely Subaru people.
Yeah. But yeah,
and most of them live here.
You have to with the snow.
Yeah. Oh my god.
We've seen the Dr. Sleep movie before, so I'm not gonna pretend like we haven't. Same as like we did with it. I was really glad that Dan doesn't die at the end.
Yeah, me too.
Because I hate that about the Dr. Sleep movie. It pisses me off every fucking time.
I hate every movie where Ewan McGregor dies. I will just put it out there. If Ewan McGregor dies, I don't like it.
So instead of does the dog die, you need does Ewan die.
Yeah, I think that might be the only movie I've watched where he dies. And I don't like it. I like it better if he's yelling or crying in anguish. He does it well.
Fair enough.
Mostly I'm thinking Star Wars and Moulin Rouge. I love those movies.
Either way, I was glad that Dan doesn't die, because I wasn't sure if he died in this or not. I was like, I would be surprised, because we know Dick Hallorann doesn't die in The Shining, and that was a choice that was made.
I'm really mad that we can't have, like, a little side discussion about Ewan McGregor movies. Because you love Big Fish.
I do love Big Fish. That was a great movie.
I love Moulin Rouge. I love the Star Wars prequel. I don't give it. Come at me. Fucking at me. The prequels are great. The Obi-Wan show is phenomenal. Hayden Christensen was blasted for no good reason. What people did to Jake Lloyd is fucking wrong. But Ewan McGregor's great. He's great in the Star Wars movies. And then I love Down with Love. And I hate that people don't know that he sings. I don't know if anybody doesn't know that he sings anymore.
I was going to say, I think at this point, everybody's pretty aware that he sings.
But why don't I have an album? It's Christmas time. If you didn't know from my Luigi Mangione thing at the beginning, it's Christmas time. Why don't I have a Ewan McGregor Christmas album?
You have to ask Ewan McGregor.
You ask. I'm pretty sure from all of the fucking fan mail and the restraining order that he already knows that I want this.
Can't help you with that. Either way, Dan Torrance lives. He does not die like at the end of the movie.
What is it? Oh, it's Muppet Christmas Carol, where Tiny Tim does not die. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind.
But obviously, like, especially while he's holding in death, you're not really certain if he's going to.
Shut up!
Shit is like, he's not doing well, and he's got the death flies, but it's because he is just containing death. He is just the vessel with which death is transported.
Fucking Cheddar. Great choice to not kill Dan Torrance. I understand why they do it in the movie, and I'm sure when we watch the movie for the pod, we'll talk about that.
There's a lot of differences between the movie and the book. Because obviously I don't think the movie ever goes into Lucy and Dan being siblings. They hardly have Lucy in the movie. It's mostly her dad. They mostly have David in it.
I don't remember, if I'm honest.
Yeah, he's hardly in it, too. Like, it does not really get into Abra's family. I don't think it conveys that message too well. Rebecca Ferguson, though, oh my god, so good as Rose the Hat. And some of those scenes are... Because I always think about the scene where she's, like, astral traveling and trying to get into Abra's head, and then she does, and then, like, the script gets flipped on her.
Yeah.
It's such a good scene because her face is through it.
I think that's why I remember so little of that movie, because she is what I remember of that movie.
Yeah.
She's so fucking good.
She really is.
Even for, like, the book is better.
The book is much better.
I still can't wait to watch it, and it's not just because of Ewan McGregor. I love Rebecca Ferguson, too. This is a moment where I'm being aggressively pansexual because I fucking love Rebecca Ferguson. And I do know who I love more. I've loved Ewan McGregor since Moulin Rouge. And that was like 2001. He wins by length of time. But Rebecca Ferguson still... and she's so good as Rose the Hat. Like,
she's so good as Rose the Hat. We'll get there.
Well,
we gotta watch Dr. Sleep, so...
I'm very excited for this, but the character from the book who took the whole book is fucking Cheddar. She was the best. She incredible. All the way around, incredible. She died and still was like, this will not stop me. Nothing as small as death was stopping Cheddar. Like, I understand Jack did the same thing. Jack was already a ghost. Jack had already interacted with ghosts. Cheddar kind of did too, but, like, it was different. It was on a different level. Cheddar was like, I will protect my family, my great-grandbaby. These motherfuckers. I did not immigrate across an ocean and go through college and make a living off poetry, which people can't make a living doing manual labor, which is supposed to be the thing that, like, always you can make a living off of. And she was like, no, I can make a living in 2 languages. Minimum. We know that she speaks Italian and English. She's like, I'm going to learn a whole new language and then make a living in that language, writing poetry in it. And then I'm going to die. And then I'm going to take out, like, most of the True Knot. You thought it was measles coming for you. It's Conchetta. Like, fuck you, True Knot. Ugh.
You know what I think is interesting about that is that she is the writer of this story, because there's always been a writer in every fucking, like, Stephen King book we've had to read at this point.
Yeah.
And Chetta's the writer. The main character is not. Obviously, Dan reads, but he doesn't write. It's not like Jack.
I don't know. Chetta entered him.
I'm just saying, it's a nice shift, because obviously...
It wasn't David? David's not the writer? He's the dad and the writer.
He is, but David is, like, he is such a weird character. He seems to only be there when somebody needs to use a character to do a thing.
He's the David Ex Machina.
Because, like, David only gets pulled in to be a tool. Chetta actually has a character.
In so many ways.
Chetta is described in any way. Chetta is given a personality. David doesn't have one. That's why he's dumb. He's dumb and useless. Because honestly, Lucy hardly has a personality, too.
Yeah.
Like, Abra's parents were there because they needed to give her parents, and he didn't want to make Dan a dad.
Well, he couldn't describe Lucy until the reveal, because if you described Lucy too much, we might have clued in.
I will say, having read the trigger warnings so I could put them together for the episodes, when I saw Infidelity on there, I was like, it's gotta be Jack and Wendy.
Yeah.
Jack cheated on Wendy. Like, I'm not even shocked at this point.
I think we talked about it in The Shining, that we assumed he was cheating at some point.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't a shocker.
No.
That, oh no, he did in fact. But fuck around. You're not telling me anything new.
So, question.
I've been waiting for it to finally drop.
Yeah, me too. But question, do we think then that Lucy's mom is the elusive, like, car crash victim?
No.
Since she died in a car crash?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's fair.
They hit a bike that had no rider.
That's what Jack saw. That's how Jack remembers it. Jack, who was super drunk at the time and also has a strong shine and could have either remembered it any kind of way or maybe made it look any kind of way, because he also kind of remembers that it was Al driving, but it's alluded to that might not even be true in The Shining, because I remember that because I was trying to track whether or not he hit the kid.
Yeah.
And it's alluded to at times that he was the one who, because that's why I thought it could be the kid. And so in this one, the fact that that the point is made that because she was a pedestrian in a car accident, wasn't she?
I don't know. I really did not have much interest in that plot line.
I feel like it was an important note because it's kept close to the chest what happened to the mother, and it's not revealed until after the reveal of Jack as the father and how that went down. And then I could swear that she's a pedestrian. I could be remembering it because it makes the pieces fit, but I'm almost positive that's how that's what it is. That would make sense to me because it's never actually put out in The Shining. Like, this is what happened. This is who we hit. And because he saw a bike and it's a kid is alluded to. And if he knows that he could have or did, or that a child was a possibility, it could be like he's seeing a bike because we know that he had that vicious streak. So he sees her not knowing that the kid has already been born because Lucy was so young. And he's hoping, like, I will take care of this. And that's where, because he had such intense guilt over it. And Jack didn't really have a lot of guilt over shit that didn't matter. So, I don't know. I think that was, I don't know. But
I'm not sure. I personally don't think it was her. I think it was just Stephen King's life has become defined by car accidents.
Yeah, that's
Even
fair.
before his, he has always kind of turned to that because, Jack hits a bike with no driver. Bill gets hit by a car, which causes his stutter. Jake gets hit by a car, which is what sends him to Midworld. They're Midworld, right? Or is it?
I can never remember.
Okay. Well, sends him to the way station.
Yeah.
He gets hit by a car and gets to there. Stephen King has more than one book about an evil car.
Yeah.
Stephen King has always defined his life by cars in a really interesting way, and the incidents that occur around them.
So we joke a lot about, like, this is the thing that sent us into the bad reality or the bad timeline. Do you think Stephen King surviving that car accident is what sent us into the bad timeline? Because he knew something was coming for him. And like no offense to Stephen King, like on a personal level, he seems like a fine person. Like, I'm not trying to be like, he should have died. I'm more saying, like, if a butterfly can flap its wings and then, what is it, like a tornado happens halfway around the world or some shit, a hurricane, I don't remember, the butterfly effect bullshit. Could that have been the butterfly effect? Like, we are in the reality where he survives the car accident, so we're also in the reality where everything else is happening.
I'm going to say something that I might end up cutting out of this. I think where shit went wrong and we went into the bad reality was when Hinckley missed.
Oh. No, don't cut that. That's fine. Whoever understands that, like, anybody who doesn't get that, or who does get that and is going to be upset by it, isn't listening to us at this point. Like,
that's fair.
If you cut that, but you let me say some of the shit that I say, we're not going to have a podcast anymore.
You wouldn't know. You'd have to listen to it.
If I find out, because that's quality. That took me a second. I'm like, who's Hinckley? And then I'm rolling through I'm like, okay, assassination attempts, failed assassination attempts.
Well,
where we really went wrong was during the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, in 14? I get my history nerd card revoked for not knowing that better off the top of my head. Woo!
So I kind of want to talk about their cycling.
Yeah, that sounds great. Maybe we should do that.
The true knot when they cycle, and I was surprised at how accurate the description kind of was to what they do in the Dr. Sleep movie.
Yeah.
Where they do almost like an x-ray view, and then suddenly like they're back and they kind of like flash in and out. One of the themes throughout Dr. Sleep is the fact that you do have to keep cycling. You always have to go back to where it started. It goes around, cause wheel. And that is what Dan is observing. That's why he's going like, fuck, I've got to go back to the Overlook, don't I? I have to go back to where it started. I think that's also part of why he finally breaks and tells people about what happened with Deanie and Tommy, because he has to go back and come right back around.
Yeah.
And each time he just has to hope it cycles better. And the fact that their death is called cycling.
Yeah.
It's like, what happens to them then? Because obviously they seem to go up. They turn to nothing. But do they actually turn to nothing? Do they go into something? Because if they make steam, I assume other members could eat them. But why is it called cycling? And you get left with nothing but clothes that you then have to get rid of.
I have thoughts.
Okay.
If you think, like, reincarnation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to, like, learn lessons as you're going, but you're also, like, everything is born and everything dies. But these people, the true knot, have decided that everybody else is rubes. They're fools. They're suckers for being in that cycle of life and death, of birth and rebirth, right? They've noped out of it. And not only have they noped out of it, but to keep themselves going, they're feeding off of the pain and anguish, and I would argue then the lesson of other beings. Like, they're driving themselves and keeping themselves out of the cycle of everything else by taking away, like, from
cycling souls.
Yeah, essentially. Like, and they're also taking those souls out of the cycle. And in particular, they're taking children. They're taking the shine, right? Doesn't Dick say at one point in The Shining that it's old soul, like, you're an old soul? And I know that Wendy and Jack say that about Danny at one point, that they felt that about him. Well, he's older than he seems. They're older souls. So they're going for shining souls, older souls. Again, they're feeding off of souls who've already been through the cycle a bunch of times. They're also taking them out of the cycle, out of the wheel, storing them in canisters to feed off of them later to, again, keep themselves out. It's cowardly. They are afraid to move forward. And then when they do cycle, it's so, like, death is painful. Death is a no matter how it comes or when it comes, it hurts. And we see that as Dan is sitting with people, but he's sitting there and holding their hand and helping them through it. And that's what happens when you have a support system. Even these people who are in hospice and are dying alone have somebody there, right?
And the orderly who he didn't like.
Yeah. Somebody, even though it's painful and it's scary, it's still a part of life, right? But then, the True Knot, they're supposed to be a family. And they're dying with their family and they won't touch each other. They can't. And I think they're essentially having to have all of their deaths and all of their cycles and all of it all at once. They're having to feel every cycle all at the same time. And that's what their cycles are. They're essentially like dying and coming back, dying and coming back, dying and coming back. Their soul is having to have all of them. Like, Grandpa Flake hangs on for a really long time. He's the oldest of them. Snakebite Andy only cycles for, 5 minutes? 10 minutes? As she's talking to them, she's the youngest. She only had so many. She would have died and then maybe been, she probably wouldn't have even died by then.
No, I don't think she would have. She'd have been older. I mean, there's a slight chance that maybe she would have been in, a horrible accident. Yeah. Gotten another round, but very unlikely.
But how much steam had she taken in? Because I think they probably have to die those deaths too.
Yeah.
And cycle for those deaths too. And feel the pain of those deaths too. They're living on other people's
time.
Yeah. And so now they have to feel all of the things that they're avoiding feeling. There is no avoiding it. You can just prolong it. That's what I think.
What do you think happened to all their assets?
They're still True Knot. That it was only that little group.
Yeah, but Crow Daddy's the one who was maintaining all of it, and Jimmy Numbers is gone too. So the group that did break off, do they have the connections enough to continue to claim the items?
Do you want the real world answer, or do you want the happy book answer?
There's a happy book answer?
I'm sure in the happy book answer, nobody takes those assets and then they get returned somewhere. The real world answer is that there has to be, they have the quote unquote company towns.
Yeah.
And so there's almost no way that somebody doesn't step in and take that shit. Or could, there has to be some, succession where somebody is stepping in and taking it. But, and fun fact, for anybody listening, there's websites where you can go to find out if you have unclaimed, assets. If you have, if somebody died and left you money, or if you had, a deposit with a utility and you never took your deposit back, you moved or something. You can go on a website. I don't know what those websites are. Reddit will probably tell you. Lots of places will tell you. Don't pay for this service. It's a free service in most states. This is in the United States. I don't know about outside of the country. In the US, the state has to return that shit to you. Kat would know about unclaimed wages. They do it that way too.
You go to the state for that. But as far as the unclaimed assets, I know of this because of the Mike Tyson mysteries. There is an episode in which Pigeon is looking that up, and or maybe it wasn't Pigeon. It might have been Mike's manager. Actually, was the one, because it might have been when he was living with them, and they find that Marcus, whose name isn't Marcus, Mike just calls him that because he's a Marquis, and that's what he pronounces it as.
Yeah.
But Marcus finds that he has some unclaimed assets wherever the fuck he was supposed to be from. I can't remember, but it was international for sure because he's not a marquee in the U.S.
No.
I don't think we have those.
Not yet. Jinx.
This is an echo chamber. We know it. That's okay.
It's a quartet.
It is a quartet. But
the dogs are in it too.
I do believe that the episode that's in also tells you which website you can go to. because Mike Tyson, like the Mike Tyson mysteries start out in Vegas because they live in Vegas.
Yeah, I've been on the Nevada. I didn't have any assets, but I definitely looked. Because why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you look? You might as well look.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely look. Like, even if you don't think you'd have anything, look anyways.
Take what is yours.
What do you think about their cycling? Just to get back on it.
I don't really know. I'm interested. I feel like it was oddly specific and yet also not detailed enough, like what is happening there. Because they'd had cycling before, and generally Rose had attributed it to people doing stupid things and getting themselves killed. And she cycled awful quickly herself, but she's also considered quite old. I don't know if maybe the Overlook ate her a little bit.
Maybe that felt like part of a rush to the end, if I'm honest.
I will say I think there were some parts of this book that, as good as it wasn't...
Like Derwent taking out Silence Area I didn't love.
See, I did like that. I was like, yes.
No, like it didn't feel earned.
No, it was kind of shoehorned in there of like, oh, that's right, I need to really like close the loop on the old lady in the tub and the, great party, isn't it?
Yeah.
Guy. So in that sense, I have to agree. It did not make sense. It also, like, I struggled with that a little bit because it didn't make sense that the shed would have been kept.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of weird. And I think that also is a shortcoming of The Shining because the shed was very much implied, like, oh, stay away from it. It's got a lot of evil. What the fuck was Derwent doing in the shed? Like, we never got enough information.
Yeah.
Like, I'd assume, like, the presidential suite and shit like that, or the ballroom would be, like, the place Derwent really, like, honed in on. What the fuck was he doing in the shed so much that was his, like, place? Because it was the place where Dick almost, like, picked up the mallet and went to kill Wendy and Danny, too.
Speaking of, I'm not trying to say, like, oh, I could do this so much better. But that is one thing. I realized that Dick had moved on, but because Dick was the one who almost picked up a mallet in the shed and almost went after Wendy and Danny, I think it could have been so cool if it was Dick who ended up, like, somehow, the same way that we get Chetta. I see the point of Derwent, who is shitty, doing something good, right? I see the point of showing that Danny is utilizing, like, all of it. I think Jack as well, like, and I'll get there, but it could have been so cool. I feel like that would have been a closed loop as well.
Yeah.
Of, see this scene that almost happened in the first book, it's almost like a payoff. It would have felt like it had more to do with the shed and just something more there. And I almost feel like maybe that was where Jack was meant to show up. But now we're seeing Jack as maybe, like, the way that Derwent is not a good guy, but is performing a good action here. It's not clarifying enough that Jack is not a bad guy. He had, like, bad shit happened. It wouldn't be clarifying enough if he loses it and he's in there with the rogue mallet in the shed and takes out Silence Area. Like, there's not enough there. But I would have really, like, it would have done more than just a whoosh, and then he's standing there looking.
No, I agree, because, like, Miss Maisie not really being utilized was, like...
Yeah.
You made a point of telling me that you basically unleashed these two.
Yeah.
What... Look, one, very kind of you to return them to their home. Hopefully they don't come fucking around with you again, I guess.
Yeah.
You went through the trouble of telling me this, but then you didn't use her. That seemed like, did you forget or did it get cut? And that's almost what I'm wondering, is if there's cut content from this book that makes some of the things make more sense.
Miss Maisie's the bathtub lady. So Rose is always described as, except for when Abra sees her in the window as like the one tooth and the really scary looking version.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she's always described as the most beautiful woman anyone's ever seen. Comparing that with the bathtub lady, who is rotting and old and hideous, those two having, like, Rose having to contend with that and doing something there, I think that also could have been better. I think there could have been more there.
Yeah.
And I do also wonder if there's cut. But we know that Stephen King struggles with endings. This was a better ending than he usually gives us.
No, that's true. It was a better ending. I do think that there are some things that, I just did not
felt
love.
Rushed. Yeah.
It did feel rushed. And there were plot points that I just, like, did not care about.
Yeah.
Because even the, like, Lucy and Dan are half siblings. I'm kind of like, you know what? Of all the ways you could have executed Jack having an affair, or even just a one-night stand, Jack having sex with another person and producing a child, this has been the, like, most unpleasant, boring, bland-ass way you could have executed this. I'm not here for this. It feels very convenient, and that's what I did not care for, is it. Obviously, they needed some way to explain why is Abra so powerful.
Yeah.
I think that the execution of that was just poorly done. I almost think it could have been more interesting had it been done sooner, rather than going like, Abra secretly knew. That's why she assigned him Uncle Dan.
I know.
Like, this is...
Abra knows everything.
This is just a little bit chintzy, and I'm not... Like, I'm accepting it. Mostly because I don't really care about Abra's family. I'm not interested in that section of this plot. I'm more interested in hearing about the true knot of all of this.
Yes.
So, you do you. But, whatever. I don't like it.
This book didn't suffer as much from the same problem that it did, that it, capital I, did. But it did have the same feeling of... And most things are this way because I think most writers get very excited. This is the scene I want to write. This is the thing that's important. I have to connect these points. Lucy and Dave are a connection to get to where we're going. Chetta was important. Abra was important. I don't know why Chetta was so important, but Stephen King was like, Conchetta, important. And I fucking love him for that. Fantastic for him. It's about time I had a win, I feel like, for why I loved him as a teenager. Like, it's shit like Chetta. Like, this is why. But shit like Lucy and Dave just being a connection is why you scan his books, because why? We don't need this. Like,
there were so many details of what David and Lucy were doing that I'm like, I don't.
Dan's sponsor is he's just a connection between two things, because for some reason Dan's other friends didn't make sense as his sponsor. I don't know if that's an AA thing where it's like your sponsor can't be your buddy. I'm not in AA, I don't know. But maybe it's like you can't be best friends with your sponsor. He has to make a little friend group but also have this other guy. Or maybe it's because he needed a father figure who wasn't his buddies. And the old guy in the group didn't make sense for that. I don't know. Rose dying wasn't the important part there. Jack standing there and looking at Dan and that healing moment. That was the important part of that scene. Yeah. Like, Derwent getting returned, Silence Area. I don't know why we had to I don't know why Silence Area wasn't I don't know what. It's so much extra for
Yeah.
no payoff.
Silent Sari, I really did not care for. Not like the character
Yeah.
itself, but just she suddenly just pops up
Yeah.
and is involved in this, and I'm like, I don't even understand the point of this. The point turns out that it's just that so they can, one, use going dim,
Yeah.
and two, have Derwent attack her in the shed and go back to the shed, because she doesn't even perform the thing she's supposed to do because Derwent gets to her. And why did Derwent go back to the
They
shed?
never know. They never know that she's in the shed.
No.
They never find out, and that's why it's so anticlimactic, because you're going, oh no, she's gonna come out of the shed, and they never find out. They never deal with it. They never talk about it.
It's nonsense.
And I don't know if it's just, I don't know, maybe the point is that now we're talking about it and we care about that more than Rose's death. It overshadows it, because I'm like, why did I have to, like, did he just feel like, well, I have Snakebite Andy is dead, and I've made this point of this other character and the fact that they're together, and they can't have a deep and meaningful partnership without this person, being upset about it. And now I have to do something with them. Like, you didn't. I say, as not only a gay, but as the leading, like, as the end all be all of all gay opinions. That's me. I'm the one. It ends with me. You didn't have to. It was fine. You did not have to. I'm making the ruling. I made the ruling for all of gay. You didn't have to. Honestly, I didn't like that Snakebite Andy was, that, like, they're... I can't. That shit pissed me off, because it was like, she was made gay because she hates men. She didn't have to be. Like, she could have just not liked men. She could have just, like, maybe she was gay to begin with, and maybe she could have been a happy gay if bad things didn't happen to her. Now she's an unhappy gay. I realize it's a tangent, but I can't. Speaking about Silent Sari, I had another point. I had one last point, because we're talking about going dim. And there was comparison there with Silent Sari going dim and Abra as a doll, and them not noticing her as a doll. And I wondered, and I wanted to know what you thought about that, is the idea that Abra as a doll is also a form of dimness. And if that is a form of dimness, is the blindness of evil essentially good being dim to them without, like, actively making themselves dim? Goodness itself, or rightness, or the cycle, Ka, is essentially protecting good and the way things are supposed to go.
That is what I've been wondering, because of the way that it gets cloudy and the skies go dim and things like that. If it is a skill that more than just one side can use, because obviously Tommy, they called him Tommy sometimes. Thomas uses it. He learns it from Flag. Well, Thomas is not necessarily his brother. He's not the pinnacle of good. He's also not the pinnacle of evil. And so he is able to effectively do it too. And it is him and I can never remember the other dude's name, that go off to try and hunt down Flag.
Dennis
Doesn't like turnips. And Dennis had a shine to him.
How dare you make me not remember this? I'm almost positive you're right and it's turnips, but now I'm questioning it.
So it could be, because when we get to it and the big, like, okay, we're all going to go down into the sewers.
Yeah.
There's a big cloud cover and the skies go dim.
That's actually a super good point, because the turning point for them, they're at Cloud Gap. And it's when Abra gets taken. When Abra makes a big mistake and decides, I'm not going to stay at my friend's house. I want to be at my own house when this goes down. She feels so secure in herself, and she's so vengeful and wants to gloat about what's about to go down, that she decides, I'm not going to stick to the plan, and I'm going to go home. And that decision makes like everything gets turned upside down. And it's literally they go to Cloud Gap. It's the gap in the, like they kill a bunch of them there, but because they're separated and because she makes that decision, Crow Daddy gets her and gets, the old guy. Billy, thank you. Gets Bill. And is able to almost win. Like they almost win. Again, it's that clarification. Look, I'm literally hitting you over the head with exactly what I mean at all times. When the clouds part, the sun is shining upon this. Evil can see this again. Like it's a spotlight.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that feels like it's so the opposite of what normally is the imagery of that. It's, you know, the cloudy, scary, like dark. Darkness is where evil generally lives.
Yeah.
But in this case, like the dark, stormy skies, like that's a good thing. So that's interesting. Speaking of Bill, and speaking of Abra doing the dumb thing and leaving, and Billy just kind of being like, okay, I guess she's got it. Do you think that is someone being so old that they are forgetting, like, that children do stupid things and don't think with adult brains? And maybe, again, a criticism that King is making of himself of, I assume children are like adults and I write children too old. Or was that just me going, wow, at least you're fucking self-aware? But I felt that a lot. But just that idea of like, okay, I guess she's got it. And it's like, she's 13 and she's stupid. If you're 13 and listening to this, I'm sorry, you're stupid.
You shouldn't be listening to this.
No, go away. Like, get your parents. If your parents are letting you listen to this, get their credit card. Go to our Patreon, but only if you're actually 18, because I think you have to be 18 to get on Patreon. Talk your parents into joining the Patreon and listening.
I don't know what Stephen King's like goal with that was. To some extent, when I was reading it, it felt very much like the way that all of the adults have interacted with Abra, that because she shines and because she has this almost like otherworldly knowledge, they just blindly trust her.
Yeah.
In ways that they shouldn't, to the point that she is being made into an adult when she shouldn't be. For as hard as, like, her parents pretend that they want to protect her, and I say that because I still don't think much of Lucy and David. I think they're terrible parents. They trusted her so much to the point that she became an adult to everybody.
Yeah.
And because she does tend to call the shots when it comes to the plan, because she's like, no, I'm not going to... Like, I want to be a part of this. They're coming for me. And she has a valid point. They are coming for her. She should get to be a part of it because y'all aren't very strong. Okay?
Yeah.
Lucy and David, they don't have much of a shine. It sounds like Lucy has a little bit of one. But overall, they don't shine. They can't protect her. Billy and Dan shine enough, but even they don't compare. There's only so many things that this group of people around her can do. She should get at least a say in, like, how are we going to do this? Within reason.
Yeah.
And I think that reason went out the fucking window. And that's where we end up with Billy, who, frankly, I think was another just tool.
Yeah.
Where they needed to make sure that Crow had a car. And that when they got rid of Crow, that Abra had a means to get back. And when Dan is, like, controlling her, he's able to drive a little bit, but Dan actually doesn't know how to drive. He doesn't drive. He uses public transit. And the train.
He's so happy with the train.
He does not have a vehicle that he operates on a regular basis. And that's why he has to keep telling Billy, no, you have to wake up because you're going to have to take over when I bounce out of this 13-year-old brain.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know how to drive yet. You're the adult in the situation. And I need you to, like, get her to a place for the other adults to all kind of come together. Because the quartet exists, but members of the quartet have not been well defined.
I feel like The Shining could only have happened with a male child. This book could only have happened with a female child. Jack, not parentified, but adultified Dan.
Yeah.
Because you gotta be a man. And Abra is parentified. David expects her, like, we talked about it so much in the last episode, where she has to bring in the mail. She has to do his laundry. she is so adultified by 13 to an extent that we both were uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think that's important and ends up laid out in that part of the book. So that way when they are all treating her like she is so much older than she is, it makes sense. And I think that's also why Lucy can't come in. Like, they can't bring Lucy in. Because it's all these men who don't know what to do with a girl. They're looking at her and basically going, well, she's a girl and we don't know how girl brains work. We're all a bunch of adult men. And I think Dan's discomfort with being near her too much, and then Dave's response to Dan being around her, is maybe partially, like, it's meant to, none of them have any idea how her brain works. They don't want to. They're all uncomfortable with her, and it ages her up to all of them. So they're all fine treating her like an adult, or just kind of letting her do what she does.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's part of Billy's decision of just like, sure, I don't know what girls do. Yeah, that seems like a perfectly fine thing. 13-year-old girls do that, right? Dave, in the last part, she could be a parent. Like, sure. Maybe she has to go home and look after her child. I don't know. Because I don't know what girls do. Like, I don't think that's really laid out much with Billy, but I wonder if that's part of it.
Well, especially because Billy, like, is very distinctly older. He is an old man.
Yes.
He is not, he's not even Dan and David's age. He's an old man. So that older thinking, which I also think we get with, some of Stephen King, because he wouldn't know what to do with a girl, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he does.
Well, and I think it's very clear in the writing when the way that she goes home is menstrual cramps. I'm having my period and I'd rather have it in my own home. And it's like, you're 13 and your parents have asked us to watch you. I'm sorry. No. If you want to go collect something, if you have a key, I'll go with you. I'll take you over there. We'll get some of your things to make you more comfortable. Not. But why are you can have your period here.
Did you leak? Do you need clothes? Like, how does the mother and the friend not have shit for her? It's literally like, I've got a heating pad, I've got like Midol, the parents would have, like, what the fuck?
It makes no sense.
I know.
But Stephen King wrote that.
He published that. He actually published that. It went to print. It went to print in multiple editions. It went to print your book has a typo. But they left that, like, I can't.
Exactly.
I don't know if the mom was just like, I don't like that you're winning at Scrabble. I don't care. Go. Die. I don't give a shit. Get abducted. I don't give a fuck.
Also, like, you know what? Also, terrible, like, sitters. Terrible people watching after your children. It's like, yeah, sure, you can just go home.
Yeah.
There's a weird truck that's been parked out in front of in the neighborhood that I've never seen before the last couple of days.
Take the little fucking Scrabble queen. I don't give a fuck. I hope he does take you.
She took my triple word score.
She's literally in the window just like, her, that one. Her parents are home.
Okay, so last time, do you want to tell them what we got?
It was the justice card. I wrote it down. I have no idea what it means, but I wrote it down.
Justice is the representation of fairness and balance. It reminds us that we're always responsible for our actions and that there are consequences for everything. Justice also represents truth. It encourages finding truth through facts and by being thorough. Do not be too hasty to deal out judgment before knowing the full truth.
I'm really sorry for what I said about the lady in the Scrabble. I don't know the truth of her life.
We don't know that she's Peggy Hill.
Maybe she was Peggy Hill. No, Peggy's thing was Boggle, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another word game, but my point is just, like, they're crazy.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Neither that mother nor Peggy Hill have ever had a period in their life.
Peggy had to be upset with Hank about him going to the aisle at the Megalomart when he would never go with her, so, just saying.
I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of King of the Hill, so...
Yeah. What card did we get this time?
So this is great, I think. We got the Magician.
Oh, okay.
We got number 1, we got the Magician. So the Magician has a man standing, well, I guess it doesn't have to be a man, but I say it's a man. Standing with right hand raised, holding a wand with an infinity symbol over his head, in front of a table upon which lay all the things that are the suits. A wand, a chalice, a pentacle, a sword. I'm pretty sure the wand that he's holding is the wand? Or is the staff on the table?
The staff is the wand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. On surrounding him is a bunch of roses, which is quite nice. And there's also a few, like, lilies in front of him. And also he's pointing at the ground, which I believe is an important part.
So the Magician is a powerful symbol. He represents manifestation, power, creativity, and resourcefulness. He has one hand pointing towards the sky, while the other points towards the earth, representing a connection between the ethereal and the terrestrial realms. The Magician looks over a table containing the 4 symbols of the minor arcana, representing the resources available to him if he chooses to use them. The Magician indicates it is a good time to move forward on an idea and remain committed to it. So you know how we're not going to actually be reading Salem's Lot right now? We're going to keep the podcast going to the best of our ability through February while we get through moving. So this feels very appropriate.
Yeah. Why do I always think there's 5 minor arcana?
I don't know.
I always think there's 5.
Maybe it might have something to do with the fact that sometimes they interchange some of the terms. Instead of pentacles, they say coins. Maybe that is triggering you to think that there's normally 5.
Maybe it's because I always think 5 because major arcana and then 4 minor arcana.
Maybe.
Oh, it makes sense.
But in any case, we have finished reading Dr. Sleep. We do want to read Salem's Lot, and I'm interested to see what those vampires get up to, since we saw that these steam vampires do the shit that they do, and they own a vampire town.
Slight little spoiler. I'm almost, like, one of the very strong images that I have in my brain from Salem's Lot is a scene very similar to the one with Rose in the window.
Okay.
So keep just to keep us all very excited, keep an eye out for it. I don't know if I'm right, but I feel like, again, I read this 20 years ago, but...
Well, I mean, they do own Salem's Lot.
I know.
So...
Like, what a call out.
But in any case, that is going to be held for March, it sounds like, because February, we have to get through moving. So... next episode won't be until, let me grab a calendar. We will be returning on February 5th. And we are going to be, like, discussing the Sleepwalkers movie. It is not a watching party. I might record that, but since we're actually going to discuss it, I don't know. Undecided. But if a watch party happens, that'll be on our Patreon. You do not have to spend money to get the watch parties. You just have to follow us so that you have access.
That's free.
It is completely free. No paywall on that. The discussion is just going to be normal podcast episode. We're just going to be talking about the damn movie. And then the second half of February will be something similar, but not fully set in stone what it is going to be on. We will get to Salem's Lot in March. And we're really sad that we have to fucking wait to read the book that we've been wanting to read for, like, years now.
Someday we'll finish The Gunslinger.
Yeah. But unfortunately, life happens, and it is a wheel.
So, there are other worlds. I encourage you to find them, but don't go far, and come back to us after the break.
Love you, lobsters. You can email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram, and check out our Patreon. All links can be found in the description of our episodes.
We work really hard for the Patreon, and Megan gets mad if we don't say that.
We work hard for that money.
So hard for that money.